I never planned to watch an HOA president sink her $90,000 Escalade 3 feet deep into Georgia mud, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't the sweetest justice I'd ever tasted. The sirens echoing across my farm weren't coming for me, they were coming for her. And in that moment, watching her scream through the window like the world owed her a dry road, I knew the 6 months of hell she'd put me through were finally about to come full circle. My name is Dalton Briggs, and this 40-acre slice of red Georgia clay has been in my family since 1923. My great-grandfather bought it during the Depression with $60 and a handshake back when a man's word meant something, and not every dispute required a lawyer. 3 generations of Briggs men have worked this soil cotton peanuts and now heirloom tomatoes that support half the farmers' markets in the county. This farm isn't just where I live. It's where my daughter Emma plans to get married under the same oak trees her great-grandfather planted with his own hands. And then Magnolia Springs Estates showed up, 200 McMansions dropped onto farmland like suburban chickenpox. Country living with urban convenience, they advertised, which apparently meant living next to a real farmer so long as the farm didn't actually behave like one. The new residents wanted barns without animals, fields without tractors, sunsets without mud. And leading their delusional crusade was one woman, Vivian Hartwell. 48 years old, Connecticut transplant tennis, White's pearl necklace voice like she's scolding the universe for being beneath her. She crowned herself HOA president in under a week and started acting like she owned every square inch of the county. My first run-in with her came courtesy of a narrow gravel easement road that cuts across the corner of my property. It's been there since the 1940s originally for power company access. Rarely used, never abused, and always with respect until the day Vivian decided it was her personal shortcut. Why drive 2 extra miles on a paved public road when you can barrel a 3-ton luxury SUV through a farmer's land every morning? The first time I let it slide. Maybe she was lost. Maybe she trusted GPS a little too much. The second time I waved her down for a neighborly chat. She cracked her window an inch, air conditioning blasting at my face, then informed me with a kind of weaponized politeness, I have a legal right to use this easement. If you maintained your property to residential standards, there wouldn't be drainage problems. Residential standards. On a farm. I bit my tongue, but 2 weeks later my patience was gone. Her daily joy rides carved deep trenches into my access road, rerouted rainwater, and flooded 2 acres of tomatoes. 30 years of careful soil management wiped out because an HOA queen wanted to shave 90 seconds off her commute. When I approached her again, calm, reasonable, trying to keep my annoyance from spilling over, she threatened legal action. Harassment of elected HOA officials, she called it. Elected by who herself, but that was just the opening shot. 3 days later, I received a certified letter thicker than a Bible. 12 pages of complaints, environmental hazards, improper water runoff, biological waste conditions. According to the document, my compost bins were unregulated waste sites, my irrigation system was industrial runoff, and my pumpkin patch for local kids was an unlicensed entertainment facility. The county inspector, Jim Martinez, called me personally. Dalton, I'm sorry, man. It's nonsense, but I'm required to investigate all of it. I spent $400 photocopying permits and documentation my family had kept for decades. I walked that inspector across every inch of my land, showing him exactly how our water flows, where our compost is turned, how our rotation cycles work. He cleared me of every allegation, but the shutdown during harvest cost me $5,000 in lost revenue. That was supposed to be Emma's wedding dress fund. Vivian's reaction. She filed an appeal within 24 hours. That's when something in my chest cracked. I was tired, deep tired, the kind that sinks in your bones. I'd come home every night to ruined crops, flooded rows, or another letter from some agency I'd never dealt with before. Emma found me standing alone in the barn one evening, staring at the ledger for the 100th time. "Dad," she whispered, "maybe the farm just isn't meant to keep going. Maybe we sell, maybe we start over somewhere else. I don't want this place to break you." For the first time in my life, I actually considered giving up, selling out. Leaving this earth I'd walked since I was a child. Maybe she was right. Maybe the world didn't want small farmers anymore. Maybe I really was fighting a losing battle. But that feeling hopelessness, it lit something else inside me. Because I realized surrendering wouldn't save my daughter. It wouldn't save any of the families who still depended on farms like mine. And something told me Vivian wasn't just an entitled neighbor. No, this was bigger. So I installed trail cameras. High-quality, motion-activated, date-stamped. Within days, the footage revealed everything I suspected, and worse. Vivian's joyrides weren't random. She timed them to disrupt my farm stand hours, my deliveries, even Emma's wedding planning sessions. She led HOA inspection tours through my land like it was some exotic zoo exhibit. She spun her tires deliberately in muddy patches, smiling as mud flew in every direction. But the real punch to the gut came when I dug into public records. A series of complaints, a bakery, an antique shop, a dog groomer, all from her previous community in Connecticut, all eventually bought out by Pinnacle Development Corporation after the owners were buried in legal fees from, you guessed it, HOA harassment. This wasn't a pattern. This was a playbook. I brought everything to agricultural attorney Patricia Finley. Her office smelled like expensive leather and competence. She listened, steepled her fingers, and said, "Mr. Briggs, you are the victim of a coordinated squeeze-out tactic, but you have something they didn't." She pointed to the easement documents. "This is an agricultural operation. You have federal protections they never expected you to know about. And if she interfered knowingly, that's a federal crime." Still, I didn't realize how deep the rabbit hole went until the day Betty, the 70-something courthouse clerk, shuffled toward me holding a dusty file box like it contained buried treasure. "Dalton, honey," she said, easing into a chair, "your great-granddaddy wasn't just a farmer, he was clever." Inside the box was the original 1923 deed, handwritten in ink, so faded it looked like ghostwriting. And right there, in calligraphy-level penmanship, was a clause I'd never seen before. Easement rights shall be rendered null and void if used to harass, impede, or interfere with legitimate agricultural operations. A legal booby trap, 90 years old, and it detonated in my hands. Suddenly, everything snapped into focus. All the harassment, all the sabotage, the fraudulent complaints they'd voided the very right Vivian used to drive across my property. And every recorded instance of interference wasn't just evidence, it was a separate federal violation, each one carrying up to $50,000 in penalties. I remember standing in my kitchen that night holding that deed, feeling like my great-grandfather was gripping my shoulder. Emma walked in, saw my face, and whispered, "Dad, are we going to win?" For the first time in months, I didn't hesitate. "Yes, sweetheart, we are." My farm became a war room. Maps, timelines, evidence binders. Farmers from all around the county crowded around my kitchen table as we uncovered a chilling pattern. Pinnacle Development had been targeting small farms like ours for 2 years using identical strategies: harassment, bogus environmental complaints, legal pressure, forced sales, high-profit development projects. We formed our own coalition, sharing evidence, preparing to fight. Vivian must have sensed the tide turning because she arrived at my front door in her tennis whites like a malfunctioning Stepford wife and offered me $25,000 to peacefully transfer permanent easement rights. I laughed in her face. "Vivian, where exactly does an HOA get that kind of money?" Her smile slipped just enough to confirm what I already knew. The next week brought a storm of retaliation, sabotage at my pump house. 2 men caught on camera using bolt cutters, anonymous calls in the middle of the night, Emma's car tires slashed, fake online reviews claiming my vegetables were contaminated. Someone even tried to break into my equipment shed. And then came the nuclear strike. Pinnacle Development filed for eminent domain, claiming my farm posed a public health hazard. They submitted glossy charts, aerial photos, fabricated soil analyses, the kind of polished nonsense that costs tens of thousands of dollars to manufacture. But their mistake, their fatal mistake, was escalating everything at once, because it triggered federal agricultural interference investigations across multiple agencies, and we had every bit of proof they never expected anyone to collect. The final showdown came during an emergency county commission meeting. 300 people packed into a room meant for half that number. Reporters, cameras, HOA members in coordinated outfits. Vivian took the podium first, clicking through a pristine PowerPoint presentation depicting my farm like some post-apocalyptic wasteland threatening innocent children. The crowd murmured. Commissioner Hutchkins nodded solemnly. They thought the game was over. And then I stepped forward. "Thank you," I said calmly, placing a weathered document on the projector. The faded handwriting filled every screen in the room. This is my great-grandfather's original 1923 deed, including an agricultural protection clause that makes everything Mrs. Hartwell has done, every complaint, every act of sabotage, illegal under federal law. The room went silent. I opened my folder and pulled out the first USB drive. And this, I continued, is 3 months of trail camera footage documenting criminal interference with a protected agricultural operation. Clip 1. Vivian cutting irrigation lines at 2 in the morning. Gasps. Clip 2. HOA members trespassing during my daughter's birthday party. More gasps. Clip 3. Vivian on the phone telling someone to accelerate agricultural elimination procedures. Dead silence. And this, I said, pulling out a final set of documents, shows financial ties between Pinnacle Development Agricultural Transition Solutions and Commissioner Hutchkins' wife. Monthly payments. Coordinated complaints. Public resources weaponized against private citizens. Vivian shot to her feet, shrieking that it was fabricated, illegal, defamatory, but the sheriff's deputies were already moving. The warrants had been signed hours earlier. She was handcuffed in front of everyone, tennis whites, and all her perfect suburban mask cracking into panic as flashing cameras swallowed her whole. Hutchkins turned the color of old paper. Federal agents entered the room handing out subpoenas like party favors. Pinnacle executives were escorted out the side door, some protesting, some silent, all exposed. And me? I just stood there, the 1923 deed still warm in my hand, realizing my great-grandfather had saved this family from beyond the grave. Vivian was led through the parking lot, past the news crews, past the people she'd manipulated, past the neighbors she'd weaponized. As she was loaded into the back of the sheriff's car, her eyes locked on mine with pure hatred. But there was no power behind it anymore. No threat. No leverage. Just the empty rage of someone who thought she could bulldoze a legacy and found out too late that the foundation was stronger than she ever imagined. And that was where it ended. Not with celebration, not with fireworks, but with the simple, quiet sound of a car door slamming shut behind the woman who'd tried to erase a century of my family's history. Some battles aren't won by strength or loudness. They're won because someone long before you planted the right protection in the right place, trusting future generations to stand their ground.